Hey, everybody, welcome to week 163. And if you hadn't noticed, it's Father's Day weekend this weekend. So had to wear my love it when they call me Big Papa t-shirt. So celebrate your fathers if they're still alive. Unfortunately, mine and my father-in-law, who I love dearly, are not with us any longer, but I'm relishing all those other fathers out there, and I'm also relishing calls from my kids. That's all I really care about. So anyway, treat your fathers well. We got a great lineup for you today. We got Adam Boatsman still joining us, even though he's technically off this week. He is just such a good soldier. Jack Santinello is back as always, and a special guest, John Christenbury with CBRE, and he is a commercial real estate extraordinaire. Like, he is probably the biggest hustler out there that I know. He is honest as the day is long. We're going to ask him for his insights into what's going on in this crazy world, especially with commercial real estate, and how does it affect you as a business owner. That's what we're going to be looking for. So go easy on him. Do not chase him away. So be easy on the chat, and you can hit us up with questions in the Q&A. You guys know the drill. So let's see. I think I'll throw it to Jack first for any current events, as he's smiling here. And then we'll go over to Adam, and then we'll tee up John.
Well, I don't have too much to share on current events. And I mean, we could talk about the elections and everything else, but I will share in relation to what we're talking about today that, John, I was very excited to hear the news, and I feel bad saying this, that the lower occupancy rates or the availability of office space uptown, because I immediately, when I saw that, I think it was published in the Charlotte Business Journal last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, ran to our office manager and said, when is our lease up? Because the negotiator in me was, hey, okay, what kind of free stuff is the landlord going to give to us at the next renewal? Or what walls do I want painted and that kind of thing? And then found out that no, we're locked into our lease for a little bit longer than I thought we were. So, and I'm in the One Plaza building, which is the B of A Plaza building where the Omni Hotel is. And I occasionally will, I'm on floor 22. I will walk down the steps. I don't walk up them with my lunch, but I go walk down them. And every once in a while, there's doors that are propped open, which they're not supposed to be because they're fire doors technically. But I'll look in, and there are many floors in this building between 22 and 1 that are open shell. And so, I'm very interested in hearing how the commercial real estate world, both landlords and tenants, are reacting to that. And where is the leverage? Is there really leverage with tenants or not perceived leverage? But anyway, so those are my initial questions out of the gate for you, and when you're presenting in a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be good. All right, Adam, I'm sure you've got some rants. Oh, and
yeah,
I love your background there.
Yeah, so I'm sitting in my backyard. So I would kind of echo Jack's comment that our building is about to be vacant, but for us. So you'd think that we'd be getting like big old bear hugs, like, how do we lock you in here in South End at a great rate? It's like, no, that's not what we're getting. But anyway, a couple things that I was going to hit on. One is a dour note, and then the other one's just hey, just remember this when you're having a tirade note. On the dour note, we've had webinars that have been focused on succession planning and just making sure that hey, plan for at some point you're going to leave your business at some level. And a guy that's actually been on this webinar a few times, a participant, asked questions. Mike Feldman with T1V, he was killed, a couple weeks ago. Known him forever, since maybe 2 years after he started T1V, and I just, it's like one of those things where and the company was about to go public, so it's one of those things where it's like, it really highlights that when we all have that feeling of like, I don't need to do anything about this today, because I'm, in my mind, I'm still a 16-year-old teenage boy that's invincible. That's just not, that's not reality, So that's the dour note. It's like, hey, take this crap seriously, because you don't want to be the one that has to, be there to pick up pieces, in the event that something happens. So, it is sad about Mike, but it's also, just remember that, like, you just don't actually know what's going to happen, with the rest of your day or tomorrow or anything else. So it's, don't procrastinate. On the funny note, or just remember this when you're having the tirade note, my parents are in town for my son's high school graduation, youngest son, about to be an empty nester. So way to go. He made it out. And there's a Washington Post article that we shared that talks about the return on investment for IRS auditors. Because remember, part of the latest bill is they defunded, the 87,000 people that were going to get hired. The return on investment, based on a survey that was done by Harvard University, so credible source. Now the data set is old; it was 2010 to 2014, so we'll own that. But the return on investment is that for the top 1% of income earners, which, if you're wondering what the top 1% is, it's about $1 million in AGI. That's where the cutoff. That's where the cutoff is, about $1 million in AGI. At the top 1% level, for every dollar that the IRS spends on auditing a high income earner in the top 1%, it returns $3 in tax. So it's a 1 to 3 ratio. So for all those wondering, does it actually pay for itself? The answer is yes, it actually does, in a 1 to 3 ratio. If you scale that up to look at the top 0.1%, which is about $3.5 million cutoff, then the payoff is about $6, is a little over $6 for every dollar spent on auditing. So, point being that, that is what we're giving up. in addition to the inability of the IRS to answer my telephone call when I need to call about a tax notice. There really are, true non-compliance issues that do exist. And again, it's primary. If you look at like low to middle income earners, the non-compliance issues that exist are really around the earned income tax credit and things like that, but there's probably a little recovery that exists there, but the real non-compliance issues actually do end up at the higher levels. And that's generally because, things just get more complicated and the opportunities to be more aggressive exist. And, some people, BGW, like what we like to do is we like to push the boundaries, but make sure that we can back it up. Some people don't, and that's where the recovery exists. So when I guess my point in bringing it up, Gary, is just a reminder that, like, when they keep on talking about the boogeyman, and we're coming for you, remember that the reality is, look, there's real dollars to be had, based on people not complying with the law. And that ratio is about 3 to 1 and 6 to 1 respectively. If you set the cutoff, of $1 million and then $3.5 million. In other words, like, I think if they came out and said, okay, well, then we're only going to focus on people making over $3.5 million, it's hard to boo-hoo, about that. So anyway, that's what I got. And John, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. So yeah, I think probably the first thing, John, that we're interested in is give us a state of the union in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then also let's kind of look at other hot spots, because we've heard about vacancy rates in San Francisco and some of these other places that have had huge upheaval. Anything that you can share with us about that? Then we want to learn about, like, all right, what are the banks lending on? What are they not, especially in this space? Because these are business owners and their top lieutenants that are on this call. And some of them own their own buildings. Some of them are leasing. A lot of them are leasing. So let's kind of go down those paths, John.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to be here. And I think I can hit on Jack and Adam's questions they had earlier on concessions and what landlords are doing. Just there are two different areas of town, even though they're just separated by I-277. For background, for those watching, my background is I'm a specialist in the office sector here locally, and half of my business is focused on Charlotte proper and the office space that it is made up in Charlotte proper. All I do is help companies. I don't actually assist on the landlord and investor side of the business. And then the other half of my business is I work with companies managing the real estate portfolios across the globe. So a couple of companies, just to throw out there, their clients are LPL Financial. Me and my team assist them with all the real estate they have across the country. Bearings, we are working on a deal in Singapore and in Geneva, Switzerland right now. That is office and also industrial. So I have a good beat on the industrial market as well for those that have industrial businesses. And then by nature of CBRE being the largest real estate firm in the world, I also we have capital markets teams that are focused on office, industrial, and multifamily, all separate teams, and then debt team as well. So when you're looking to place debt, they're a good source, but they're also a good source of information for me, because now it's becoming more and more relevant than ever to know if you have a landlord, who they are and where their loan maturities stand, and are they at risk of default, and what your lease looks like under those. When you're going to sign a lease, if you're in the midst of construction, making sure that you're going to be able to pay your tenant improvement allowance that they promised you. To give like an overarching view of Charlotte as a market, I'll try to break it up into the different buckets of, office, industrial, and then the investment sales side of capital markets, and then multifamily. So for Charlotte, on the office leasing side, is a tale of two worlds. We are a Sunbelt city. We're very fortunate that companies continue to look here. There's been major jobs announcements with Ameriprise Financial saying, hey, we're going to put 400 jobs in Charlotte. We're going to lease 2 floors in Uptown. And that's great, but the banks and Duke Energy have done a lot of consolidation as the big corporates here, and because of that, our vacancy rate has risen to I think 12.6 across the city, and the national average is 13.1. So national average is factoring in the gateway cities of San Francisco, New York, and we historically have not been anywhere close to those average vacancies since the financial crisis back in 2013. That was when the last time we had parity. We do see that companies, for the most part, they're decreasing space, decrease their footprint by 60% when they gave back the old Duke Energy Center and some other space in Uptown and consolidated in their brand new office tower. Bank of America gave back 400,000 square feet at 200 North College Street in Uptown. So where all that demand or lack of demand has been is in Uptown. So Jack is in a position where it's a super tenant friendly market in Uptown, and in certain parts of the suburbs like the university area, down in Valentine, there've been, where the big corporates were and they had big blocks of space, we've seen significant decreases, and that's given opportunity to get deals. Now, it's not like post financial crisis where keys just went back to the lenders everywhere, and because businesses just declared bankruptcy and landlords immediately couldn't collect rent and didn't have cash flow. This is more of a slow burn of lease rates, or lease expirations have to occur in order for space to be given back, vacancy to increase, and then there's less cash flow on the books for these investors and they can't pay their notes, so then it goes back to the lender. So I think that's a big difference maker. We have so many clients think there's just going to be some crazy deal out there for their space because of what's happened in return to work and what they read in the headlines, but it's just simply not the case. The city as itself has seen 3.3% rent growth year over year in the office sector. So I think there's deals out there. They're to be had specifically in Uptown, that's and the university area. Those are the two areas of town. If your business is looking for office space, you could find those deals where you might see rent decreases. You're going to see tenant improvement allowances that are larger than ever expected. Free rent packages larger than ever expected. So the shiny new objects, new and most desired space in South End, unfortunately for Adam, is seen total opposite. You see double-digit rent growth in South End, and that's largely driven by the demand for every company for the most part. And the city, if they're looking to do something big, they appear to look in South End and then wherever they may be located already in the city, because there's this big drive for talent. And with South End, Adam, unfortunately, I might have not helped your cause and just put a full floor tenant into your building. So they'll be occupying here later this year. But there's added confidence because, our office, CBRE's office, is in the new Vantage project where Lending Tree is. That full project is 100% leased, and the last lease to be signed in that project was a $52 per square foot gross lease rate. So yeah. And so you have these new construction projects that are, north of $50 a square foot. That enables a building like yours to draft off of the new construction rents that are occurring, because now you're in the most desirable submarket, and the top of the market's $52 a foot. Well, I could come in the high 40s per square foot, and I'm going to capture the next tenant. So that's kind of what's occurring in the office sector on the leasing side.
What about Valentine?
Valentine, it's been amazing because there are so many big corporates there. And big corporates have, for the most part, decreased their overall footprint. The Valentine's vacancy rate coming into COVID was 4%. 4%. And right now, the vacancy rate is 30%. So we've seen, Campbell Snyder, they have they've made an announcement to consolidate their headquarters into New Jersey, which is the first company I've ever heard of that's going from Charlotte to New Jersey rather than New Jersey to Charlotte. And that's a full building on the sublease market. Tia Kref, they consolidated in the university campus. They gave back another full building. And there's other tenants that have socialized, giving back large blocks of space as well. So they've really been crushed by the big corporate occupiers of space and their consolidation efforts. So what we're seeing is Valentine is softened dramatically. And the deals that we're working on with clients there, we're seeing tenant improvement packages that we've never seen before and concessions that are great. And Valentine and Northwood, the owner, is very hungry to earn business.
So add Valentine to Uptown and University area for deal seekers.
I'd say so. It's not as dramatic as Uptown. Uptown just saw banks give back more space than anywhere else. But it is, a very good area to look for space if you're looking for a deal.
John, can kind of give us like just round ballpark, like, okay, when you're saying unheard of tenant improvements, unheard of kind of packages, unheard of,
Yeah.
I mean, and kind of lease rates in those areas, what are you seeing, now relative to what it was in those two areas?
So previously, for doing a 10-year, like back in 2019, you're doing a 10-year lease for your headquarters or critical office. You probably get a tenant improvement package of somewhere around $65-70 per square foot. Now, in these markets, you're doing a 10-year deal. It's very common to see $100 per square foot tenant improvement allowances. So almost a 30% increase on tenant improvement allowances. And some of depending on it all depends on the owner. You need probably a well-capitalized institutional owner. But it's been very interesting to see. Now, in South End, you're probably not going to get that type of an allowance because it's just in high demand and the owners don't have to give it. But in Uptown, any 10-year plus deal I'm working on is going to have $100 plus per square foot allowance. But that's a good question. Yeah, anything else before I go to the capital markets side of office?
Let's go to industrial.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And
I was going to say, if you got, so let's say that you're in one of those areas, you kind of wait for your lease to come up for renewal before you start negotiating, or, is there any kind of opportunity that if you got, 2-3 years left to lock in another, like Jack's case, you got 2 or 3 years left to lock in another 10, while the iron's hot. Like, in other words, what do you do if you're Jack?
yeah. Well, he's unfortunately he's got more than 2 or 3 years left, just from what I know about their lease. But for that's a good question for the companies that are there. And as long as if you're giving back space, it's a little more challenging. The deal terms have to work. Landlords aren't going to necessarily lose money. We had a larger client ask for that in the university area. They want to give back 30% of their space. But if you're within 2 to 3 years, you can absolutely have those discussions with ownership. They're going to want to have the guarantee long term of you, and they'll give the concessions. We have a lot of those conversations, and if you're in those areas, then yes, it's probably a good time here over the next 6 months or so, depending on where the office market goes, to have those discussions, because right now it's very soft. I think that it's building dependent too, and loan dependent for these owners. So you need, an expert in this field to probably guide you on should you have that conversation or not. Then you can assess. But we also see on the office side that, Facebook just made an announcement that September 1st, employees are going to be required back 3 days a week. Apple's already done that. We're starting to see the tech companies who really drove it completely remote. My sister works for Maersk. She was hired as a remote employee, and now she's being told, hey, guess what? Things have changed. You're going to come in a couple days a week. So I don't know, it's hard to have the crystal ball. Is that going to change the way, and like, are we going to go a little bit back more towards the way things were? Maybe. And does that increase absorption? Maybe. It's too early to tell.
And before you go on to industrial, so my question is, and John, I know you know this, but for others, the third floor of our building was converted into a tenant amenities area. And so they have a golf simulator, they have food and beverage, they have community space where a lot of our staff, they'll grab lunch and go down there and hang out just to kind of get away from everything for a little bit. They have music on Wednesday afternoons outside. Once a month, they do massages, I think. They have meeting space that is partitioned, but you can open up the partitions kind of like ballrooms in hotels to create a larger space. They have all the AV. They have a room for podcasts and video casts that you can go down there and utilize. And most of the stuff is for free if you're a tenant in this building. So how common is that to, basically landlords or owners upping their game as far as providing amenities to their tenants inside of the building or dedicating space? I mean, it's not inexpensive space, and they completely redid an entire floor for that. So how common is that throughout Charlotte, or maybe in pockets of like South End or Uptown?
Yeah, good question on tenant amenities. Owners are having to do things now and invest capital to lure tenants, because it's such a competitive market for tenants and larger tenants in particular. Jack's building has probably the nicest amenity floor in the city. The owner invested $7 million into that floor to do the things that you just mentioned. We're seeing most of the buildings, especially the Class A buildings, are in the city, are doing those types of things. Like in Valentine, they put pickleball courts on top of a parking deck that's exclusive to tenant use. It just depends on the building and the investor, but there's more and more of that. And that's something that has been important to companies. If you're not going to be able to drop your office directly in the heart of South End, where everybody wants to have walkability for eating and, nightlife and all that, then landlords are doing everything they can to draw those tenants with amenities. And we can help identify where those amenities are. They're important.
Man, what you just described, Jack, was what I experienced in the .com boom and visiting one of our investment partners, where we invested in a group in San Francisco, and they were doing the massages and bringing lattes, and it's great until the music stopped.
Well, what's interesting about that is I don't think, and hopefully no one from that group is listening or will listen, but they did not really do a good job of sharing the news that all this was out there. Yeah, they post things, but they really should have done I better, because there are people that I said, oh yeah, you're gonna get your massage kind of thing, or hey, let's go grab a drink or grab lunches and go down there. Like, what are you talking about, kind of thing. So I think that it's great to build it, but if no one really knows about it, then you're not getting the benefit of the investment, I don't think.
I agree with you 100%, but I think that the more and more companies learn about it, or that maybe they're trying to not spread the news to existing tenants, and it's just to the tenants they're trying to lure into the space. Like, we don't want to fill it up with current tenants. Let's get the folks through there.
Hey, John, before you go into the industrial space, talk about some of the trends, because what you've just already talked about with some of the fully remote to 2 to 3 days in the office, hybrid, that's what we're doing too. We kept it kind of a hybrid situation before anyway, but we want to maintain culture and still allow flexibility. And so we're sharing offices and we're hoteling and reducing our footprint. Is that becoming more and more of a thing? And what are some of the trends that you're even seeing in that area of what business owners are doing or are faced with?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, our office, we just moved into our new office in November, and we are in a fully unassigned seating concept called Workplace 360. And nobody has a dedicated office or cube. It's really meant for dropping in and out. What we've seen with the trend on that is it's wild because everybody just keeps coming. They come in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday if you're going to require somebody to come in 3 days a week. And so the seat count can't really change from what it was. And it's really about how well a company enforces it. There's been, just from what I've seen, I think it's management dependent on how well you enforce it. The banks they've been bearings, they've socialized. You know, this could be a part of your performance review. I think that's what Facebook said is, come September, if you're not going in 3 days a week, then that'll be a part of your performance review. So we've seen a lot of the hybrid, and it's all about technology. I mean, Gary, at the end of the day, if you want to make the 3 days a week and make hybrid work, you have to have the Zoom room technology to make it work. Because the hoteling piece, if you're going to do required 3 days a week, it can work for certain companies, but if there's somebody that's going to come in and sit down and seat every day, then I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense to go that route. It's also been interesting because law firms in particular have been one of the least or most resistant to jumping on a hybrid hoteling concept. But I'm working with one AM 100 law firm right now, and if you don't go in, the plan is even if you're a partner, you don't go in 3 days a week into the office, then you lose your office and it becomes like a hoteling office. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of mandates come down, right, Chris? So I go back and forth with the chat.
Yeah, I see Chris. Chris is always trolling me anytime I post something on LinkedIn about return to work and all that. But I think, yeah, Chris, the future is coming, man. It's whether you want to admit it or not. And employers, when they get the ability, every executive I work with wants their employees in at least a couple days a week. They just have had a lot of trouble pushing it. And I think that now the tech company is doing this. It's going to probably help swing the pendulum. Yeah,
it's kind of like if everybody isn't doing it, you're kind of swimming up a stream that nobody wants. They're all going the other way.
Right.
The genie has been let out of the bottle. So anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, let's move into some of the industrial stuff, because I know we've got folks on here that have industrial buildings or are looking at, they're either leasing industrial buildings or they're looking at buying. Talk about that.
The industrial market is almost the opposite of the office market. When it's been on fire for the past 2-3 years, and a year-over-year rent growth has been 13+%. Vacancy rate in Charlotte right now in the industrial market is 5.5%. When you're at 10%, for perspective, when you're at 10% of a vacancy rate, that is where you're kind of in an equilibrium for landlord favorable to tenant favorable terms. So it's very much an landlord favorable market. We've seen the depression of absorption in our city and mostly across the country, but that's because Amazon, FedEx, UPS, everyone's stopped doing those big box distribution center type leases, and now it's just natural industrial need and smaller lease requirements out there. That all said, because of what's happened with the capital markets and the interest rate increases, speculative development, certainly in the office world, but even in the industrial world, has come to a halt, because it's just hard to justify the cap rates with when you marry those up with the interest rates. The industrial, we think, because even with less absorption, there's still going to be we'll still see the vacancy rate decrease because there's less speculative development in the industrial world. And so hopefully that helps kind of paint a broad picture. And yeah, I do have clients that are all over the US and world in the industrial world. And I'll tell you, like, it's very similar story depending on where you go. You have markets like the Inland Empire, which, that's out by LA and Long Beach, the ports out there. And we're looking at sub 3% vacancy rates. And rent growth can be, I had a client that just experienced a 150% rent increase from a lease rate. So it's wild. Yeah, in Atlanta, same thing. It's, I think sub 4%. And a client that, we signed the lease back in 2018, and it's 5-year lease. Lease is up next year because it was signed in 2018 for 2019 occupancy. And the lease rate we negotiated was great at the time, and the renewal option is at fair market, and fair market has jumped, and it'll be a 112% rent increase. And so that really, like, as you all know,
Wow.
Yeah, rent is one of your top expenses as a business, especially like when you're in an industrial setting, and that really can eat into margins. So just, it's something it's hard to get in front of. We've been playing more defense with our clients because we kind of see that it isn't getting better over the next year and a half in the industrial world, certainly. So it's like, you almost, if you can renew early, then do it. But with like this deal we're working out in LA right now, because the landlord knows that the market's trending up, they don't even want to have the conversation on a renewal. And we're 18 months out from a lease expiration. So
Wow.
that'd be my advice, is if you can get in front of it early, it might be wise in the industrial world.
150% rent increase, man. That's rough on a business with margins, and it's already hard enough running businesses, but man.
Yeah. I mean, Toronto, we're doing a lot of deals up there too, and that is sub 2% vacant. So
Really?
yeah, if your business is growing or you need space up there, you literally have to build the building. There's just no space. So you go and sign, that forces you to go into a long-term lease. You have to build a building, and your lease rate's exponentially higher than probably what it was.
So let's talk about somebody that they're facing that in the Charlotte area, and they're like, screw this, we're going to go ahead and just build our own building. What's that look like? I mean, yeah, if you can get a loan, there are owner occupied lenders out there still, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only place you see lending occurring right now, is the owner occupied side of the business. The good news is general contractors we're starting to see their general fees and conditions get less expensive, but supplies and the sub trades are still operating, not they're it's because they're so busy building apartment buildings and whatever else. You still see that they're not getting competitive. That's something, Chris Muller, who's on, could probably comment better on the construction side, but from a loan perspective, you're just going to deal with the higher interest rate than you did, a year or two ago.
Yeah. Any questions?
And finding
from the
land,
gallery?
land that's zoned industrial that you can build, and if you want I2 land in particular, which allows for outside storage and heavier manufacturing, you have to go further outside the city in order to do that. So if you're dependent on being close to the city, it's that type of land is so valuable. And finite. It's very hard to identify.
Are you doing anything with opportunity zones, John?
Not really. Nah. I think our investment sales guys might, but I don't have any. I have one client that went into an opportunity zone, but they went in with a partial ownership with a developer who had majority ownership, so they didn't really see much in the value there.
If anybody is listening to this and they're interested in that, Ashley Tyson has kind of gone all in that opportunity zone world. He's a good guy and very sharp. So look Ashley Tyson up, and if you're interested in that, let me know and I can connect you. But yeah, this is really good. What else? From Chris, subcontractor market's thin, material costs are high, labor is scarce, some supply chain, hold on.
Supply chain
Items have improved.
Yeah.
It's a challenging build market, but doable with high level of diligence. Thanks for weighing in on that, Chris. Plus, I like the banter back and forth. That's been funny too. Like, we need to do wank word bingo. We did that at Bank of America. That was hilarious. we would do bingo sheets, and we had multi-city conference calls. Had to do something to survive that craziness.
I think, Gary, what might be helpful too for your a lot of business owners own real estate outside of their business, and a lot of that can be either through funds or maybe they own their own, and a fair amount over the past 10 years. It's really been a big bull cycle for multifamily apartments. Yeah, and the cap rates there had just gotten crazy. And the demand's still there, especially in a city like Charlotte that sees 80 people move here a day. Cap rates were quoted just at this past recent quarter at 4.6 cap. So the rent growth helps justify these institutional owners buying. But year over year, we're seeing multifamily, because of what's happened in the debt markets. The transaction volume is roughly 2/3 of what it was last year this time. Wow. So that's a big drop when you consider, like, there's just this year alone, just 677 million was closed, compared to over $1 billion last year. Our guys, they're busy, but those that are selling right now, or those that are buying, this is just something that I've heard from our investment sales brokers, that all the institutional capital is frozen on the sidelines, and it's all high net worth that is going after a lot of the current multifamily, because they don't have to compete with, the big REITs out there. So, your interest rates might be tough. You might be putting more down, but you don't have as much competition as you did for the assets and opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, that's good to know. There was a guy that I was talking to yesterday, and I don't see him on the list here, but I'll make sure he gets a link to this recording. Just anybody that came on here late and missed anything on the front end, we'll put this up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on this afternoon. Any other questions from you guys as business leaders, business owners? You got an expert on the line here. And Chris was actually pretty decent on the chat, so he wasn't too bad. He added some levity. I like it. Yes. So I got to read this. This is good. Chris, thanks for being on here. Got to hop. To be clear, John is best in class and cares deeply about getting it right for his clients. That is true. Probably the hardest job in America right now. You're wrong even when you're right. Better together. Yeah, I like that hashtag.
That's right. Yeah, I enjoy Chris. He's helped clients of mine with when they have construction projects. He's a good resource.
Yeah, that's good. I'm surprised I don't see Robert Mayette on here, because normally we would have a whole bunch of stuff, because I know he's got some clients that are actually in the middle of building right now because of some of that, and it's in the industrial space. So anyway, so you missed out on that one, John, because he usually has some extremely good, well thought out and detailed questions.
Well, I'm here for it. If anybody sees this, and feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to field any more questions.
Yeah, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you, John, if they're shy now, or they watch this on YouTube channel? What's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
Sure. It's just email john.christenbury, how it's spelled in the Zoom, at CBRE.com. And then my cell phone is 704-330-9988.
All right, cool. Check him and connect with him on LinkedIn too. I've gotten to know John for a number of years now, since I came back in 2015, so 8 years ago. And he is really, really good. So if you're looking at negotiating or trying to figure out what do I do in buying, leasing, etc., John's at the top of my list on my call list. So that's for sure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, you've been great. And I know you got to scoot to a lunch. So I want to make sure that you don't get late because of us. Any other last call questions for John? And then we can address anything else that you guys want from a tax or legal or business growth standpoint yet in the remaining time, or we can call it a day early. It's up to you. James, thanks, John. Not bad for a CBRE guy. I love it.
I'll find you later, James.
Kirk says thanks. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, we're here to serve you guys, so we appreciate you guys being on here. Oh, hey, next question from Bruce. He always has good questions too. In the Sun Belt, is there a market for converting office facilities to residential property? Great question.
Yeah, Bruce, that's something that we absolutely see in the Rust Belt occurring. Cincinnati's had a number of office projects converted, and our office projects turn into residential. It all comes down to the size of the floor plate of a building. And the window lines that go with it. Unfortunately, in Charlotte, most of the buildings were built with like a 25,000 square foot floor plate, north of 20,000 square feet. And, you think about it in a residential sense, to make 2,000 square foot unit, it's just going to be one long bowling alley from the common corridor to the window. And that doesn't give much for window lines, and then how expensive it is to, most apartment buildings also have balconies. So to convert the glass and make the balconies. It's very expensive. So we see that the return has to be double what the office rents are in order to justify doing that. And you also need, the floor plates to be of size. And so, it just really depends on those are the factors. It doesn't matter what city in the Sun Belt, to when you're looking at that. And Charlotte in particular, I think Wells Fargo right now has on the market the full block where Mimosa Grill is. And one of those buildings, I think it's two Wells Fargo centers, just smaller. I think it's like 17,000 square foot floor plate. And that's being contemplated for either hospitality or residential in its marketing package for the site. So that's what we're seeing on the office to resi conversions.
Hospitality, I could see. I used to office in 2 First Union. Wasn't much to write home to mom about at the time.
Yeah, there's a reason why Wells decided to get out of that building.
Yeah.
So John, I have a question on the residential side of things. So I've lived in Charlotte for about 35 years, minus the 7 years in undergrad and graduate school. What is the current draw? What would you say is kind of the top 3 things that attract people to move into Uptown to live? Because I see younger people before they have kids and not wanting to, not needing to be out in the burbs with a yard, fenced in backyard kind of thing. And then also I see the empty nesters coming up here. And I jokingly say, well, I don't know if I would ever be able to do that unless I had people my age around me, because I look around and it's all these kids running around in their 20s that are, taking over Uptown. So, is it the light rail? Is it having Harris Teeter or a grocery store next to you? Is it having a pool on the rooftop? Or, is it hospitality, meaning restaurants? What do you see as kind of the top draws to bring people into Uptown to live?
Yeah, it's tough to speak from experience because I have 2 toddlers and there's no way I'm moving uptown. But I think everything you said is what's drawing those folks to live uptown. And I've seen a wide range of, the baby boomers to the new kids fresh out of school. And it's just a variety of factors of walkability and the amenities you mentioned. But the trend I see the most is the folks that are like living in those apartments that are uptown. They just came down from the Northeast or somewhere a bigger city, and that's what they relate to. And then they get there, they live there for a couple of years, and they're like, oh wait, I can go a mile outside of here and have way more space, and it's half the cost. And they end up making that move into like a single family home or a townhome. So hard to speak to from personal experience, but I think the amenities you mentioned and familiarity with living in a bigger city tend to be like the reason why we see uptowns, multifamily thrive.
Yeah, and I would also say that the increase in safety. So, back in the 80s, you wouldn't be uptown after 5 o'clock, and definitely not on the weekend. And now it's, people walking around and you see the police presence, and not that there aren't issues, but there are always going to be issues, but it wasn't like it was in the 80s and 90s to want to be uptown other than during business hours.
Yeah, I agree with it.
All right. Well, I do know you got a lunch to get to. So, John, you have permission to leave. You did a great job, by the way. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate the questions and happy to help in any way. If anybody has any additional questions or curious about the real estate,
reach out to John Christenbury. He's one of the good guys.
all right.
So is Jack, and so is Adam. They're both good guys too. So
thanks for the honorable mention. Appreciate it.
Hey, even though you haven't given out Starbucks gift cards lately, You're really good for that.
Yeah, I also have not told any dad jokes in a while, so you know.
I know. What's up with that?
I know.
I mean, you got to give us a dad joke. All right, John, you go. Go
I'll have a
give
great
us a dad
afternoon.
joke.
Thank you, John.
You guys.
I heard one this morning. It was Star Wars related.
There you go. You got Adam's attention now.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna save it because last time I told a joke, I completely ruined it. So I will rehearse for next week.
No, it's Father's Day weekend, man. A dad joke. Come on, man.
All right,
Even
keep
if
talking.
you blow
Keep
it.
talking. Let me think about it to make sure I got it right. Talk for about 30 seconds. So let's see.
Oh man. I don't know what to say. You know, now you put me on the spot.
Oh, now I got it. Now I got
There
it.
you
Okay.
go. Okay,
All right,
good.
I'm gonna try. I hope I don't mess it up. All right. Where do the Sith shop?
Ooh, you got me. That's an Adam question. Where do the Sith shop?
Yeah.
So you
okay.
stumped Adam too.
At the mall because they get half off.
Oh,
That's sort of decent. You have to know the movie and have seen Darth Maul chopped in half. But yes, okay. So
I'll
there you
have
go.
to tell that to my grandkids because they're big Star Wars fans. Oh, that's good. All right. Well, any last call for any questions, comments? We'll plan on being back here next week. Same YouTube channel, same bat channel. So thank you guys for taking time. Adam, thanks for taking time out of your vacation week to come and join us. Jack, it's always good seeing you. Everybody, have a wonderful day. Enjoy the beautiful day out there. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.